What up, fight fans? It is Saturday night, July 18th. It is time for the Iman Report. After a little bit of a delay, I was having a little dinner before I got on air. Now we're on air for the night, and it's time for the Iman Report. And tonight, the main event was Figueiredo versus Benavidez, and this time, Jason Figueiredo legitimately wins the 125 belt. And this was not a contest at all. But I would say Benavidez was game. He survived a couple submission attempts, came up to strike. Then Figueiredo gets the knockdown. And that's when the fight should have stopped. Unfortunately, Mark Goddard, this is my WTF of the night, lets Benavidez take a lot more punishment than what should have happened. And I think when Benavidez was knocked down, that's when the fight should have been finis. Unfortunately, it took Figueiredo ends up submitting Benavidez, and unfortunately, he puts Benavidez to sleep, and that worries me. But this is not the first time Mark Goddard's had poor officiating. Mark Goddard's not been great as of late. I think it is time for Mark Goddard to be suspended from reffing. I think a suspension might be warranted after tonight. Goddard's been a terrible referee as of late. So I think a suspension is what's needed for Mark Goddard. That fight should have been stopped much earlier. But as for Davison Figueiredo, he is the legitimate champion at 125. And I think he could be the champion for a good while. But you have to feel bad for Joseph Benavidez. He's probably one of the better fighters, just simply not to win a belt. And I don't think he's going to fight anymore, but I do think he'll be a Hall of Famer. But he's just one like Donald Cerrone and Nate Diaz. Good fighters, they were just not meant to be champions, and that's where Joseph Benavidez falls. Always a bridesmaid, but never the bride. And that's going to be Joseph Benavidez's career. But I think for him, he's probably going to retire, and I think he'll have a good career. He had a great career in the UFC. He's fought against the best, unfortunately just came up short in the title fights, and it happens. You can hang your head on making those big fights, and he's got a good marriage, and now he just goes and collects retirement. And as for Davison Figueiredo, who is next for him? Is it Brandon? I think most likely it's Brandon Moreno. I would like to see maybe Cody No Love Garbrandt try to go to flyweight. I would love to see Garbrandt fight Figueiredo at some point at 125. Unfortunately, Garbrandt has plans to try to contend and fight at some point Peter Yan for the belt. For Garbrandt, the line's going to be a little long. He's going to have to wait behind, first off, Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling. And if Yan beats Sterling, then he likely fights TJ Dillashaw, who comes off a suspension next year. But if, say, Garbrandt wanted to come down to 125 and fight Figueiredo, I don't have any problem with giving Cody Garbrandt the next title shot. And I think I would love to see Cody Garbrandt fight Davison Figueiredo. That is something the flyweight division needs. They need some star power. Or else it might be Figueiredo's might be the next next Demetrius Johnson, where he dominates the flyweight division for a good while, and that could really happen. But I think most likely he fights Brandon Moreno. That's likely who's next for Davis and Figueiredo, but I do think Figueiredo is going to be champion for a good while at 125. And I'm going to take a look at the flyweight rankings. See if there's anybody who can give Figueiredo a challenge. It's 3 is Brandon Moreno. Alexandre Pantoja, he could have made his stake to a claim late. We'll talk about him later tonight. Excuse me. Is it? I think. No, Pantoja lost. I am so sorry. My goof. I've barely been home, so yeah. Okay, Pantoja lost. Askarov has all of a sudden jumped into the top 5 at flyweight, and the rest of the names are it's not a deep division, and I really don't know who is going to be a threat for Figueiredo at 125. He could hold the belt for a good while. And if, say, Peter Yan is able to be successful against guys like Aljo, who they're probably going to fight sometime later this year, Aljo and Yan, and then after that, it's very likely going to be Dillashaw. Probably at some point, maybe Garbrandt fights for the belt again. So it totally wouldn't be a surprise in a year or two if these two, in maybe a year or two, we see Figueiredo go for a second belt at 135, unless Dana White decides to put more star power at 125. And this is where I would like to see. This is kind of where I want to see Cody Garbrandt go. I think Garbrandt would be what they need as in terms of star power at 125. But at this point, I think the fight is going to be Moreno. It is likely Brandon Moreno against Davis and Figueiredo is likely going to be your next fight there. In the co-main event, Jack Hermanson with a heel hook submission of Kelvin Gastelum. This was a first-round submission. And in this one, I think this loss is a killer for Kelvin Gastelum. Likely puts him out of the top 10 at middleweight. He's 2-4 at 185. He's 2-4 in his last 6 fights. And his best win is against Jacare. His wins are against Bisping, Jacare. His losses are against Adesanya, Till, and Hermanson. We'll get to that in a moment. Jack Hermanson did get the win. I don't know if he's going to get a much better ranked opponent. You got Till and Whitaker fighting next weekend. And if Whitaker could get the W, he gets himself right back in the title hunt. Maybe he gets Darren Till if Darren Till wins. I don't know. You've got Jared Cannonier. Unfortunately, Hermanson's lost to Cannonier, so that's not possible. So your two possibilities, and I think one possibility is the winner of Till. You could go Till and Whitaker. That's one possibility. Or I think the second possibility is the winner of Shaboyzian and Brunson who are slated to fight. I'm not sure when, but okay, August 1st, we have Edmund Sheboysian versus Derek Brunson. Now, if I'll say this, if the winner ends up being Sheboysian, I think that is the fight to make. Edmund Sheboysian versus Hermanson, that would be a barn burner. That would likely get the title, the fighter right in the hunt for a title. Be back here in a moment. Forgive me, I just had some stupid behavior going on outside for a second. But I will say I like the idea of putting Edmund Sheboysian versus against Hermanson. I expect if the winner, and I think it is going to be Sheboysian, that likely gets Edmund Sheboysian, Jack Hermanson. That would be a really good co-main on a main card. If the winner is Brunson, then you put the winner of Till and Gastelum. I mean Till and Whitaker next against Hermanson. And that could very likely be a title eliminator. So the possibilities are wide open for Jack Hermanson. As for Kelvin Gastelum, I think Gastelum's got to take some time off. This is his third loss in a row. And I think maybe he's a bit, maybe he was a bit overrated at middleweight. Maybe we're starting to see the struggles he's having at 185. I do think a step down is maybe what is needed for Gastelum after losses to Till, Adesanya, and Hermanson. The other trouble with Gastelum is he's missed weight too many times at welterweight. That I don't know if he can return to welterweight. It might require him to change camps, and honestly, I think this might be what we might need to see out of Gastelum is maybe he changes camps, goes with a different nutritionist. Maybe change it, maybe take a bit of a time off and convince Dana White that he can convince him that he won't have any more issues making 170. But I think step one is he's got to maybe take a break and change camps. I don't think he's going to get cut, but I don't think he's a contender at 185. I think his better days was at 170, to be honest. But he just couldn't make weight at 170. So this is the time where maybe you've got to make some changes. Change camps. Start making a plan to cut, maybe make it an easier weight cut where you're not having these issues to cut weight to 170. I think this is where Gastelum belongs, is back at 170, but not right now. He takes a bit of a break. And then when he does come back, maybe a guy like Bilal Muhammad or Neil Magny. He's fought. He lost to Neil Magny. Never mind. But maybe Robbie Lawler or Mike Perry. Who knows? But I think first, first things first for Gastelum is figure out if he's in the right camp or not. Change camps if he needs to, and just take a long break. And problem is he's falling into gatekeeper territory at this point. If he does decide to stick around at 185, I don't know who you give him at 185 next. Maybe the loser of no. Maybe Ian Heinisch. Maybe Brad Tavares. I think Brad Tavares. I'm going to go with Brad Tavares. This is another fighter on a losing streak at 185. I think Tavares could be the right guy to get Kelvin Gastelum back on track, should Gastelum decide to stay at 185. But I think he's got some soul searching to do, and if he's willing to get with a nutritionist, get with a new camp, reinvent himself, this is a back to the drawing board moment for Kelvin Gastelum. And I hope he does these things, change camps, get with a nutritionist, and convince Dana White that you can convincingly make 170 without killing yourself. I just don't think he's any more than a gatekeeper at 185 at this point, and I don't ever see Gastelum contending again at 185. I think he's kind of been exposed. On to the third fight before that. Rafael Fiziev beats Mark Diakiese 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. This was Fiziev is now 2-1 in the UFC with wins over Alex Weiss and Mark Diakiese. Only losses to Magomed Mustafayev. Yeah, if you hear pops, there's idiots lighting fireworks outside. So could Fiziev be a prospect? Maybe. He looked pretty. But I think we continue to slow walk him up the stacked lightweight division next. I say a fight with Matt Frivola should be next for Fiziev. What's next for Diakiese? I don't think it'll fall that much, but okay, maybe a fight with Roosevelt Roberts is what's next for Mark Diakiese. Go with that. Ariane Lipsky beats Luana Carolina by submission via knee bar. What's next for Lipsky? Lipsky is a prospect. All right, Lipsky is ranked number 30 according to Fight Matrix. So I think for her, her next fight should be against Justine Kish. That is what makes sense ratings wise. And as for Luana Carolina, I think a debutante is what's next. Askarov beats Alexander Pantoja by unanimous decision to kick off the main part of tonight's fight card. Askarov is now approaching the top 5 of the 125 division in rankings. I think what's next for Askarov is possibly a fight with Alex Perez. That would likely maybe get the winner of that fight into the next title shot after Brandon Moreno. So Perez versus Askarov for the next in a title eliminator. I think that's next. What's next for Alexander Pantoja? I don't think he'll fall that far down. Maybe the loser of Bontorin and Kate for Pantoja. In the prelim cards before that, Roman Dolidze beats Cadiz Abrigimov by a TKO knees and punches in the first round. Trying to speed through these a little bit since I as for Cadiz Abrigimov, I think this is his third 0-3 in the UFC. Bye bye. Adios. That's what I think's next for him. And for Dolidze, I think just another prospect's probably what's next for him. Grant Dawson beats Nad Niramani via unanimous decision 30-26, 30-27, 29-27. As for Niramani, this is his second loss in a row. So I do think the next fight for him is going to be another fighter that is what I call near the Jeopardy line. As for Grant Dawson, who's next for Dawson? Dawson looking like a nice prospect at 145. Definitely needs a step up in competition next. I'd say Nate Landwehr is the right step up for Grant Dawson. Joel Alvarez submits Joseph Duffy in the first round. After the fight, Joseph Duffy, the guy who beat notorious Conor McGregor, calls it a career. And I think that's the right move. As for Joel Alvarez, who's next for Joel Alvarez? The winner of Alex Munoz and Narsat Hakparast is what I think what's next for Joel Alvarez. In the fight before that, Brett Johns beats Montel Jackson via unanimous decision. Brett Johns continues to be very underrated at 135. And I actually think he's might get a fighter next that's on the edge of the top 15. I say Brett Johns versus Casey Kenny. Casey Kenny's another prospect that's like right outside the top 15. Put those two together, the winner of that fight likely gets a ranking next to their name. As for Montel Jackson, he'll take a small step backwards. I'd say give him the loser of Vera and O'Malley. Amir Albazi beats Malcolm Gordon via triangle choke. Armand Tuskagian beats Davi Ramos via unanimous decision. Davi Ramos now on a 2-fight losing streak, probably a fighter that's on a skid. And as for Tarsukian, he is 2-1 at 155. Who is next for Sartukian? Sarukian. I think Sarukian deserves a bit of a step up. I say Stevie Ray. Sarukian versus Ray, that'd be what's next for Sarukian. Stevie Ray ranked right near him. And in the first fight of the night, Sergey Spivak beats Carlos Felipe via majority decision 29-27, 29-27, 28-28. I think what's next for Spivak, I actually think Greg Hardy should be next for Spivak. I'd like to see how Greg Hardy would handle fighting a grappler. So I kind of want to see Spivak against Hardy. See if how Greg Hardy can handle a grappler. As for Carlos Felipe, it really doesn't matter who Felipe fights next. And that would conclude it for tonight's fight card. I'm hoping to have tomorrow I should have a bit more energy. I'll finally get some rest. I've been working a lot last few weeks. So tomorrow I'm going to try to do NFL. I kind of want to do preview the Big Ten tomorrow, preview the AFC South tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon. And then next Saturday night, it is UFC back on ESPN. And with a good fight card coming up, Whitaker versus Till next Saturday night in Abu Dhabi. You got Whitaker versus Till as your main event. Shogun versus Little Nog as the co-main. Fabricio Verdum versus Alexander Gustafsson. Gustafsson making his heavyweight debut next Saturday night. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Esparza versus Marina Rodriguez. Peter Sabata versus Alex Cowboy Oliveira. So you've got some really good. And then you got Beth Correa against Pani Kianzad on the prelim. This is pretty stacked for a ESPN card next Saturday night. So I'll be home after work. Hopefully I don't miss too many of the fights next Saturday. I'm going to go get some rest. Please mask up. Please do so. Have an awesome night. I'll be back tomorrow.